Imagine a world where, where your marriage, your in-laws, and even your religious obligations are they're entirely erased by design.
Right, like completely wiped out.
Exactly. And all of it in the name of perfect gender equality, like no traditional family structure at all, no interior walls dividing up, who owes what to whom.
It's a pretty wild concept.
It really is. So today we are looking at a blueprint for exactly that.
Mm.
Welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. We are exploring a highly provocative text from 2013. It's an open letter written by an author named Xu Feng, and it's titled, All Women Worldwide Should Support the Second Home Lifestyle.
Yeah, and it is a profoundly ambitious piece of writing. I mean, the author is attempting to pitch a radical utopian community known as Lifechanyuan.
Right.
Specifically, they're pitching this lifestyle model called the second home. But what makes it so gripping is how it bridges this massive gap between high-level, abstract international human rights and, well, the incredibly mundane, everyday domestic stressors that actually dictate a person's life.
Okay, let's unpack this because the claims made in this text are sweeping. I mean, they are incredibly dramatic. And for you listening, I want to be crystal clear right at the top. We are here simply to explore the fascinating arguments the author puts forward.
Exactly, just looking at the text.
Right. We are not endorsing these viewpoints, nor are we taking any political sides here. We are just looking at the source material to understand the anatomy of this really unique pitch.
Yeah, it's purely an analysis of the ideas presented.
Totally. So to understand how someone gets to the point of proposing we just abolish the traditional family, we kind of have to look at the baseline first. Like, how bad does the author think the current state of the world actually is?
Well, the author believes it's completely fundamentally broken. And to prove it, the text doesn't just rely on anecdotal evidence or, personal stories.
It goes way bigger than that.
Right. It leans heavily on major, undeniable historical milestones. The open letter immediately asks the reader to consider two massive global agreements. First, there's the Convention on the Political Rights of Women from 1954.
Wow, 1954. Okay.
Yeah, and then the 1980 Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women.
So the author is starting at the absolute top, the United Nations, like the highest possible standard humanity has set for itself regarding equality.
Precisely.
But I imagine bringing those up right away is a bit of a setup, right? It's a way of asking like, hey, we signed these papers decades ago, but what does the reality actually look like today?
That is the exact rhetorical pivot. It's a classic setup. To answer that question, the text brings in some very heavy data. Specifically, it quotes former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon from 2007 and 2012.
Oh, interesting. So using the UN's own words to show where we're at.
Exactly. And the statistics cited paint just a grim picture of systemic structural failure. For instance, the text highlights that globally, women's labor continues to be undervalued, underpaid, or just entirely unpaid.
Right, which is something we hear often, unfortunately.
Oh.
But the text goes even deeper into the structural denial of agency, doesn't it?
It does. It points out that of the more than 100 million children worldwide who are out of school, the vast majority are girls.
Wow.
And of the 800 million illiterate adults globally, most of those are women.
800 million. That is just a staggering number to wrap your head around.
It really is. And the author uses these UN statistics to show that, we aren't just talking about a lack of corporate opportunities here. We are talking about a foundational denial of basic education and economic independence.
Yeah, the absolute basics. And from what I saw in the text, it takes an even darker turn when it addresses physical safety, right?
Yeah, it does. The 2012 Ban Ki-moon, quote, used in the text, focuses on his call to end violence against women. It cites that millions of women and girls worldwide are subjected to horrific violence like assaulted, beaten, mutilated.
It's horrific stuff.
But the crucial piece of evidence the author focuses on here is actually the aftermath. The text emphasizes Ban Ki-moon's assertion that it is all too common for perpetrators to go completely unpunished.
Right, leaving women in what the UN calls a culture of impunity, a system that essentially silences victims through just a total lack of consequence for the abusers.
Exactly. The system just shrugs.
Looking at how Xu Feng uses these very specific UN quotes, it feels like an incredibly intense version of the before picture in a dramatic infomercial.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right, like, the ones where everything is in black and white, someone is struggling with a broken tool, and the voiceover asks, has this ever happened to you?
Yeah, making the problem seem absolutely impossible to deal with.
Exactly. But instead of selling you, like, a new vacuum cleaner, The author is using the highest global authority to paint an undeniable picture of global suffering.
What's fascinating here is the rhetorical strategy behind that specific framing. By anchoring the problem with UN data, the author builds an airtight premise.
Right, because you can't really argue with it.
Exactly. If you want to argue that things are actually fine, you aren't arguing with Sufeng, you are arguing with the United Nations. Once that trap is set, the text asks the reader a very pointed question. It basically says, can you simply wait for the United Nations to create a better life for you, or must you take action yourself?
That is quite the ultimatum. I mean, it implies that if the highest institutions of the world have been trying since 1954, and we still have hundreds of millions of illiterate women and this global culture of impunity, well, then institutional progress is just way too slow.
Or perhaps completely ineffective at the grassroots level.
Right.
The author is paving the way for a radical, immediate solution. If the system itself cannot protect you, the only logical step, at least according to this text, is to step outside the system entirely.
Which brings us to the author's proposed alternative, this Lifechanyuan second home lifestyle.
Here we go.
Yeah, and the foundational philosophy of this community, as stated in the text, is summarized in this phrase, quote, heaven and earth are reversed, and female celestials are honored.
It's a very striking phrase.
It is, but I have to push back a little here. Reversing heaven and earth sounds incredibly poetic. It has this beautiful, almost mythological ring to it.
Sure.
But it is also highly abstract. When we are dealing with concrete UN statistics about violence and illiteracy, how does honoring female celestials translate into actual practical safety and equality?
Well, the text provides a very specific structural mechanism for this. It asserts that the oppression of women is upheld by three distinct forces, which it calls the three mountains.
The three mountains.
Okay, and the core promise of the second home is that these three mountains have been entirely demolished. They identify these mountains as divine authority, clan authority, and marital authority.
So to achieve this reverse heaven and earth, they are claiming to completely remove marital and clan authority. Let's break down the mechanics of that. Because by removing marital authority, does that mean marriage itself just doesn't exist in this utopia?
Well,
like, how does a community function if you just erase that structure?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where the author's radical reimagining really takes shape. The text argues that traditional marriage inherently creates a power dynamic.
Oh, I see.
Usually a legal or financial dependency that historically favors men. By removing marital authority, the second home dissolves the legal and economic bindings of marriage entirely.
So people can still be together, but without the paperwork.
Essentially, yeah. Romantic relationships might exist, but the institutional power one spouse holds over another is conceptually erased. There is no private ownership of a relationship.
Wow. And the removal of clan authority? That feels even more massive, especially depending on what part of the world you live in.
Oh, absolutely. Clan authority represents the influence of the extended family, the patriarchal lineage, and those heavy pressures from elders that dictate how a person should live.
Right. It's that invisible force that tells you who to marry or how to raise your kids or how to manage your inheritance.
Exactly. It's the weight of family expectations. By removing clan authority, the community strips away the pressures of lineage and elder demands completely.
This essentially dissolves the traditional nuclear and extended family structures completely.
Yes.
If you remove the authority of the husband and the authority of the extended family, you are basically just left with the individual and the community. You are clearing the land to build that new blueprint without any interior walls at all.
The author views those traditional family structures as the very engines that perpetuate the inequalities highlighted by the UN.
Like they're the root cause.
Exactly. You cannot fix the house if the foundation is rotten, so the text proposes just abandoning the house entirely.
Okay, I understand the philosophy of tearing down those three mountains.
Yeah.
But, a philosophy is just an idea until you actually have to live it.
Right. Theory versus practice.
Exactly. Let's look at what a random Tuesday actually looks like for a woman living in this second home. Because the text shifts from these lofty ideals to hyper-specific practical promises very quickly.
It becomes incredibly granular, starting with the absolute guarantee of physical safety and privacy, which, of course, directly answers that UN data on global violence we talked about.
Right.
The text promises that every woman gets her own sacred private space. It explicitly states that day or night you can leave your doors and windows unlocked without any fear.
And it doesn't mince words about where that fear usually comes from either.
Hmm.
It promises that no man will dare enter your room without your explicit consent, and that there is absolutely zero tolerance for sexual harassment.
Yeah, physical safety is presented not just as a right on paper, like in the UN conventions,
Yeah.
but as a lived structural reality of the community.
Which is a huge promise.
It is. But the text understands that safety is really only the baseline of freedom. It then moves heavily into the realm of daily labor and responsibilities.
And here's where it gets really interesting to me. The text promises the complete eradication of tedious, endless housework. It's just gone. And crucially, it says you don't need to worry about caring for the elderly or raising and educating children. The community takes over those responsibilities entirely.
This is the mechanism by which they solve that UN statistic about women's undervalued and unpaid labor.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, because much of that unpaid labor is invisible, right? It's
Yeah.
the daily cooking, the elder care, the constant childcare.
Mhm.
The second home proposes to solve this by completely socializing it.
Think about that for a second. If you look at how most modern societies function, every single household operates like its own independent power generator.
Right.
Every house has someone, and let's be real, usually a woman, statistically speaking, who has to generate the meals, generate the childcare, generate the elder care, just to keep that one specific family unit running.
It's exhausting.
It is. What this text is proposing is plugging everyone into a centralized power grid. The burden is lifted from the individual generator and placed onto the collective infrastructure.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it. By centralizing the domestic labor, the text asserts that the crushing mental load is just
It's
vaporized.
vaporized. I love that.
And because that invisible labor is gone, the text promises profound personal autonomy. It specifically mentions the freedom to fully express yourself, even giving this vivid example of having the freedom to sing and dance to your heart's content without judgment or exhaustion holding you back.
It's a fascinating rhetorical pivot. The author goes from quoting Ban Ki-moon about massive systemic human rights violations to essentially talking about the endless pile of laundry.
Right, and the mental exhaustion of scheduling doctor's appointments for aging parents.
Exactly. It brings it down to the micro-level mental load that so many listeners can instantly relate to. I mean, for you listening, think about your own to-do list right now.
It's probably a mile long.
Oh, easily. Imagine if the entire category of household management and family logistics was just permanently deleted by the community.
The appeal is undeniable. And the text makes sure to clarify that this isn't some forced labor camp scenario either, which is an important distinction.
Good point.
Yeah, it makes a point to state that there are no leaders imposing their will on you. All activities are completely voluntary.
Plus, you aren't cut off from the globe. The text explicitly states that you are free to communicate with the outside world via phone and the internet.
Yeah.
So it is framing this as an open, voluntary utopia, not an isolated, secretive compound.
Exactly. And perhaps the most culturally specific yet universally understandable promise the text makes is regarding social dynamics.
Oh, this is the best part.
Right. This goes back to the dismantling of clan authority. The text promises the total elimination of traditional in-law conflicts.
Oh, the text gets highly specific here. It actually says, quote, "There is no interference from mothers-in-law and no competition or conflict with sisters-in-law." Again, targeting hyper-specific, deeply relatable domestic stressors.
By explicitly naming the mother-in-law and sister-in-law dynamics, the author is pinpointing exactly how clan authority manifests in daily misery for millions of women worldwide.
Right, it's not just some abstract concept, it's Sunday dinner.
Yes, the hierarchical demands of the husband's family are entirely removed. In their place, the text says you are surrounded by close sisters to chat, play, learn, and work with.
So they're taking away the blood relatives and marital relatives who traditionally hold authority over how you keep your house or raise your kids.
And replacing them with a chosen family of peers.
Wow.
The author insists this is, quote, no longer a fantasy or a castle in the air, it is a living reality. The ultimate pitch of this open letter is a complete structural redesign of human life.
Right.
It offers the simultaneous guarantee of physical safety and the total lifting of the invisible labor that typically falls on women's shoulders.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Fang's open letter, let's just look at the narrative arc we've just traveled. It really is a masterful piece of persuasive writing.
It definitely is.
It starts by grounding you in the undeniable, grim realities of global gender inequality. It uses the UN to validate that women are systematically overworked, underpaid, uneducated, and unsafe.
And that our current global institutions are moving way too slowly to fix it.
Exactly. From that foundation of systemic failure, it pivots to the second home lifestyle. It diagnoses the root of the problem as the traditional family structure itself, the three mountains of divine, clan, and marital authority.
And its solution requires stepping completely outside of conventional societal norms to eradicate physical danger and vaporize traditional domestic burdens.
For you, listening right now, it's easy to see why a pitch like this is so captivating. Whether or not you agree with the radical solution of dissolving the traditional family and moving into a communal second home, this text highlights a universal desire.
It really does.
It taps into the deep craving we all have for a life where our physical safety is an absolute guarantee, where the crushing mental load of daily life is truly shared by a community, and where personal autonomy is unconditionally respected.
It asks us to look at the invisible weight so many carry, and simply asks, what if you could just put it down?
It forces a mirror up to the way we organize our modern lives. The text argues that tweaking the current system with new laws or conventions just isn't enough. The system itself must be leveled.
Which leaves us with a final, provocative thought to ponder.
Yeah.
The author's vision of total freedom in this text relies entirely on the community taking over childcare, taking over elder care, and completely removing traditional family dynamics like in-laws.
It essentially requires the end of the nuclear family unit as we know it.
Right. So based on this text, we have to ask, is true gender equality actually impossible to achieve within the traditional nuclear family structure?
Must we completely dismantle how we organize our households to ever truly be free of those three mountains?
Must we look at that traditional blueprint of a house, take an eraser, and wipe out all the interior walls to finally find a space where everyone can breathe?
It's definitely something to think about the next time you feel the weight of that mental load. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.